If you had been in a coma for the last, say, 3.5 years, and you suddenly woke up this morning and you saw the news coming out of Europe that they are preparing a coalition of the willing, and you looked at some of the headlines and some of the stories that went underneath it, you would think, wow, there must have been a war with Russia and Ukraine and supported by the West, and wow, Russia must really be on the ropes. They must be just about to lose this war. Except that when you actually read the stories and when you look at what happened, you're thinking, wait a minute, maybe instead of waking up from a coma, I woke up in Alice in Wonderland and went down the looking glass hole. Because the stuff that I'm going to show you today, I'm telling you, it is mind-boggling how detached from reality this is. I keep saying that, and it keeps getting worse. And we're just going to jump right into it here. Earlier today is the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Keir Starmer, that's talking about the building up of a robust coalition of the willing and what they plan to do.
Ukraine is the party of peace. Vladimir has committed to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. But Putin is trying to delay, saying there must be a painstaking study before a ceasefire can take place. Well, the world needs action, not a study, not empty words and conditions. So my message is very clear. Sooner or later, Putin will have to come to the table. And let's be clear why this is so important. Russia's appetite for conflict and chaos undermines our security back here at home in the United Kingdom. And we won't sit back and wait for Putin to act. Instead, we will keep pushing forward. So the group I convened today is more important than ever. It brings together partners from across Europe, as well as Canada, Australia and New Zealand. So we will now move into an operational phase. Our militaries will meet on Thursday this week, here in the United Kingdom, to put strong and robust plans in place to swing in behind a peace deal and guarantee Ukraine's future security.
Words nearly failed me. They don't actually. I have quite a few words. But the shock is genuine. The Ukraine is the party of peace, the side that refused to abide by the Minsk agreements, the key issue of changing their constitution to give limited autonomy and secure pressure or secure laws and things to protect the Russian-speaking people, which was at the heart of the entire civil war that started in 2014. They refused to do that. The absolute central part of the entire agreement, they never did it. They refused in December 2021 to make, all they had to do was to say there's not going to be any NATO. They're going to be independent, that they're going to be neutral. They refused to do it. They refused to get rid of the war 2 months in Istanbul. They refused again in 2023. They refused again in 2024 in this summer, and they're refusing again now. Who is the party of peace? And who is the party of war at all costs? Russia has been trying to do diplomacy from the beginning. And now I get it. I get it. It is a common popular theme in the West, especially in the United States, and even more so in the UK, to say anyone who says something besides Russia evil, Putin evil, period. That's it. Anyone who says anything besides that is on the side of the other team. What they don't even think about, and there's your key word there, think. They don't think about reality. They don't ever talk about what I just mentioned here. You didn't hear him say, and you have never, ever heard Keir Starmer say that, yes, of course, there was a chance to avoid war, 2 chances to avoid war, 3 or 4 chances to end it during the war. And the Zelensky side, not the Russian side, they always wanted negotiations, always. They offered several deals all the way through. None of them were taken. And you want to call the Ukraine side the party of peace. Okay, so you see from the first step, this is already detached from reality. How could anything else that follows from that foundation have any chance of success, any chance of producing anything positive for the UK, for the European Union, for the United States, if these guys have their way? I mean, if you have a faulty foundation, everything you build upon it is one day going to collapse on top of itself. And that, I'm afraid, is exactly where we're heading here. I mean, just a couple of things here. He again trots out this tired old, if we don't stop them here, they're coming for us. How many times have we talked about that? How many times have they rolled that out there? Look, Russia didn't want to start the war at all and tried to avoid it. Russia wanted to get the war over early, and we had a chance to do that. If we had done the Istanbul issue or had ended the war after the 2023 failed offensive on the Ukraine side, or ended it last summer in June, there would be no more talk about Russia going anywhere because the war would have been over. But every time we have refused those off-ramps in the West, Russia gets bigger, stronger, and angrier. And I assure you, if you're paying any attention to the news coming out of Russia, you see they are really getting a lot angrier. They see all these opportunities and the possibilities for peace that they've given, and they see that not only does the West not accept it, but the West does stuff like this, and to get more provocative to the Russian side, to show more of a threat to the Russian side, which will perversely increase the chance that Russia may take this action. All this, really, in the first 2.5 years of this war, I kept saying all these claims, because this is a routine thing that the West has been saying from the beginning. They're coming to us, whatever Biden used to say it as an article of faith, mentioned it in nearly every one of his talking points that he talked about this war. And I kept saying, Russia doesn't want that. They've never talked about it. They have always talked since 2007 at the Munich Security Conference, when Putin first made a public declaration all the way through. They said their security on their western flank was what was animating them. They said they will not accept NATO literally on the doorstep of Moscow inside Ukraine on the planes that would lead right to their capital city. They've said we'll never tolerate that. They've never said anything about we're going to recreate the Soviet Union. They're often accused of that. But something that Putin said in a speech at one point has been bastardized to claim that's what he meant. He didn't. And in the context of his statements, it's very clear he never intended to rebuild the Soviet Union. They wanted security on their western flank. They didn't want to be on NATO's border, so they didn't want to capture Ukraine and then, by definition, become on the NATO border. They wanted to have a neutral Ukraine, so there's a buffer between them. We should have wanted that. That should have been good militarily and security-wise for our side. But instead, we keep going with this fiction that they're coming to it. Well, here's the thing. It's kind of a potential for the classic, you ask for it and you're going to get it. Self-fulfilling prophecy. You keep warning about this stuff, building up forces. Now, listen, this is coming in light of Ursula von der Leyen just earlier this week, talking about how they're going to have this big rearm Europe, an $800 billion advance increase in defense and preparations for the European side. They keep the individual nations, Germany, the Baltic countries, I think even Finland, Sweden has been warning their people, get ready for war with Russia. Get ready for war. I mean, these people, these are actual statements being made by senior members of these governments. What all of them fail to do, and what Starmer here is failing to acknowledge, what do you think these kinds of words and now actions, and Starmer made a big point there of saying it's time for action, not just words. He wants action and robust building up of defense capabilities. What do you think is going to be on the other side? What if the situation were reversed and Moscow was actually saying, we're coming after you, and we're going to build up a force to have it? I've often said, and did in the first 2.5 years of the war, that it doesn't matter what anybody thinks or says. It just matters what their capacity is. Russia didn't have the capacity to do anything beyond Ukraine. They were having a hard enough time to do something in Ukraine. But now then, because of all these threats, they are expanding their war, and now not just so much to go after Ukraine, but to potentially fight a war they feel is being foisted on them from the West. So now then, you're building up, so they're going to build up more. And then, of course, how it always works, then they'll eventually go, aha, see, I told you that's what Russia was doing, oblivious to the fact that they're only doing it because you're increasing your verbal and physical threats to the Soviet Union, or to the Russian side, sorry. That is the insanity of what's going on here. Obviously, I'm really animated today because this is so unnecessary. If you want to bring peace, if you want to end this potential for war, which would all too easily expand into nuclear confrontation, Starmer seems oblivious to that fact as well, which just astounds me to how you think that you can talk so militaristically against a nuclear superpower. We're not even talking about North Korea, who has a handful of nuclear weapons. You're talking about the number of warheads, I think, is the biggest inventory on the planet. And you seem oblivious to that fact, like that they're just going to allow themselves to be attacked by a large formation and no one's going to ever use any nuclear weapons. It's absurd and insane to just keep going down this path. If you want peace, if you want some kind of stability to return to Europe, and then over time, you can actually get to potentially peaceful relations, it is possible. It will take a long time now. The damage done because of this war already is going to take a generation to wear off, but it is possible. You can bring first stability, and then with patience and intelligence and wisdom over time, you can get back to positive relations. That's possible too. Or you can go down this path and make the chances of war sky high, which will rob peace and security and freedom and opportunity from everyone. All of the citizens of your country, all the citizens of other European countries that you're claiming to be defending, you're actually setting the stage for them to be deprived of liberty and possibly even life, definitely security and stability. This kind of action denies it. What we should be doing with all of the ridiculous things that have happened and the insanity and the vast number of people killed on both sides of the line is to bring this war to an end. Let's end this right now by whatever means necessary, by whatever terms necessary, and they'll be ugly. There's no good deal to have. We had a chance in the West to have good or decent or not horrible, or even like, well, we have to hold our nose, but we can do it. That's every time we fail, the deal gets worse. And now then, because of 3 years of utter failure in diplomatic terms for the West, now then we're at the terms where there's no good term for the Ukraine side. You can have a bad one right now, and there's no reason to pretend otherwise. It's bad what's on the table right now. But if you also reject this one, you almost surely condemn Ukraine to either complete military defeat, or you set the stage for the war to expand, and now then Europe is at war, and it'd be a continental-wide war. That's what you're playing with right now. You're not playing with peace. That's, the idea that that this coalition of the willing is strength is going to somehow scare Russia. It is something like a Harry Potter movie that you just get to write a script and wave a magic wand and poof, they're going to be like you want. That works in a movie where you get to write the script and you get to write what the other side does in response, and you can make your hero come up, and apparently Keir Starmer in this case, or Winston Churchill's Zelensky. You can craft that on a piece of paper and say, yay, it works. And if you're rolling cameras, it works, except in real life. And this isn't a movie, folks. This isn't Hollywood. This is real life, and power dynamics matter. That's what that matters. But Starmer doesn't seem to get that. So to his credit, in that press conference where you saw Starmer there a second ago, he had one of the British reporters actually stood up, kind of scratched his head and said, I got a question.
I'm struggling to work out what the coalition of the willing actually does on the ground. As far as I understand it, UK troops couldn't fire at Russian troops. If Russian troops opened fire, we couldn't retaliate, and nor could anybody else, because of what that would provoke. So is it just some kind of slightly more tepid training mission in reality?
The operational meeting is where the discussions are taking place as to what the capabilities will be. I've indicated a willingness for the United Kingdom to play a leading role in this, and indicated that if it's necessary, that will be troops on the ground and planes in the sky. There are different capabilities from different countries, but those are the operational discussions that are going on in relation to what this coalition of the willing will be able to provide. And therefore, it's in all of our interest to make sure the security arrangements are robust enough to defend the deal and to hold the peace. Otherwise, we'll repeat the history of recent years where Putin will breach the line again.
To robust military power to enforce the peace. That's basically what he said right there. He's proposing a military force, not like, say, UN peacekeepers where they wear blue helmets and they carry a rifle for self-defense, but they're there to monitor the peace. Those are peacekeepers. He's talking about peace enforcers, to where they would have a military capacity to punish Russia. That's why boots on the ground, planes in the air. So he's basically saying offensive force. What Starmer is describing there is that he wants to move a 37-member coalition into Ukraine to patrol whatever this mythical border is that's going to be agreed to by Russia. And if Russia doesn't agree to it, as he says this time, then we'll be there to militarily prevent it. That's what he's saying. That's exactly what he's drawing right there. So this reporter asked a kind of hypothetical question, a rhetorical question, which the answer should have been self-evident. He kind of laid it out there. Is this basically just kind of glorified training mission, implying, because obviously we're not going to move our troops into potential for harm's way into Russia, right? Except Starmer seemed to go, we're going to do that. We're going to put them on the line of demarcation. Couple things for the audience who may not be aware of it in Starmer's view there. For even that version to exist, there has to be a peace agreed to. There has to be lines agreed to, and then and only then would these peace enforcers be allowed in the country. That's just even theoretical. So work with me here. Let's go down the thought process here, because unfortunately for Keir Starmer and apparently all of his allies in Europe and all these other 36 members, there is another side to this story. There are two sides to the equation, the other side being the Russian Federation. So in your mind, come up with some kind of rational reason why the Russian side, from its position right now, its superiority in the air, its superiority in air defense, its superiority in manpower, its superiority in defense acquisition capabilities, and its strong continuing military supply allies in Iran and North Korea, all the things that they need, plus everything they can do domestically, which by themselves outpaces everything the Ukraine side can do. So from that position, with those inputs here, explain to me how it is that you're going to get Russia to agree to this. Because if you don't, there won't be one troop come in there. And I've shown you several clips in recent shows to where the Russian sides have categorically rejected this idea. I think we showed you Sergei Lavrov just 2 days ago, where he said, under no circumstances would we allow that. No matter what flag you want to use, no matter what patch you want to put on, categorically, there will be no NATO troops in part of any of this. And if they do, other officials have said elsewhere, then we will consider them as simple combatants in the war zone, and we'll kill them as much as we kill Ukrainians in the fight too. So then by definition, you'll be expanding the war. And let me just tell you that if anybody's confused on this point, if there ever is a clash between a NATO member and Russia, they're not going to keep the fight inside the borders of Ukraine. They'll not merely attack those folks, because now then you will have the physical insertion of foreign troops of whatever country it would happen to be in that hypothetical case. And Russia has said plenty of times that they will have no qualms then with retaliating in kind. That's something that's been part of the Russian diplomatic DNA forever, the tit for tat. You do this, we do likewise in kind. They say that openly. That's not even something you have to interpret. They say it openly. So there seems to be no possibility that this will even manifest itself, because the Russian side categorically won't agree to it. And I don't know why anyone would have in their mind that Russia would, from a position of strength, agree to something that would only help the other side and would leave every single one of what the Russians can view as the root causes of the war still fully alive, because it will be there will still be the possibility of a military alliance. In fact, there will be a de facto military alliance from NATO, not even a theoretical, but a de facto one. It will mean that they would not demilitarize because their military would increase. And it would mean that they're not going to change their constitution. They wouldn't be protecting any of the Russian people. All the laws that against them would still be on the books. In other words, everything that Russia went to war to prevent would be solidified and set in concrete. So what rational person on the West, God, please, Prime Minister, Mr. Prime Minister, at least go through this and say this out loud so that your brain can make these connections. If Russia was not willing to accept any of those terms in February 2022, and then they have now captured 20 some odd % of Ukraine, they have the capacity now to continue going forward and over time grind the Ukraine army to dust, and then by force of arms accomplish the things that they are trying to do in negotiations right now. Upon what rational basis would you suggest that they will accept your vision of how this can turn out? You see the vast gulf that's growing between the reality of what's on the ground and the vision of those in the West. And if you keep basing your actions on this fantasy vision of the West, then you see that you increase the chances of war. You increase the chances that there is a fight between the West and Russia. You increase the chances that there is going to be the very real possibility of a nuclear exchange. And then, folks, once that happens, I won't even project beyond that, because the minute one tactical nuclear weapon even is used anywhere by any side, the world that we know it comes to an end. That's not necessarily to say that that would automatically lead to mutual assured destruction, but the way that we think about our world and the relative stability that exists right now will be over forever. And no one can say what would be on the other side of that, except that it would be terrifying and it would be constant stress and pressure. That's not a world I want to live in, and a world we can avoid. Starmer and all these people keep saying that this is going to help everybody in the West, that this is going to make our lives better and more secure. And all it's doing is undermining it, because it's built on a faulty foundation. Keir Starmer's not the only one, because it sounds like he and Volodymyr Zelensky seem to be of one mind on some of this, because he's actually saying that really this is all Putin's fault.
A ceasefire could have already happened, but Russia is doing everything to prevent it. Putin is lying to everyone about the situation on the ground, especially about what's happening in the Kursk region, where our Ukrainian forces continue their operations. Our troops have also stabilized the situation on the front in Donetsk region. I mean, Pokrovsk. It's a big work of our heroes, and this big success, I think so.
Yeah. So that's another example of the detached from reality. He actually started that clip off by saying, with confidence, Putin's lying. He's lying about everything. He's lying about what's going on in Kursk. Is he, though? Is he lying about? Even the very, very pro-Ukrainian Institute for the Study of War has a very different view of what's going on in Kursk. I'm going to show you that in a minute. We're going to show you that map there, and you can decide for yourself who's delusional, who's lying, and who's telling the truth. And apparently, President Trump doesn't buy that version. More on that in a minute, too. But it seems, though, that somebody who does believe Zelensky and seems to be, in a certain sense, kind of in his pocket, and that's Keir Starmer. So you just heard what Zelensky wants. Here, going back to Keir Starmer's speech, he seems to pile on with what Zelensky wants.
I think it's really important at this point that we put maximum pressure on Russia. This yes but is not good enough, and that's why the collective resolve this morning was to put pressure, and we can collectively put pressure on Russia. There were a lot of countries represented, and that momentum and that resolve by a number of countries, and making sure we continue to be forward-leaning is really important.
So you see, Zelensky says, and by the way, that soundbite from Zelensky is at that same conference. He's addressing them by video comms. You'll actually see here subsequently another video that shows him actually talking to them. But Starmer seems to be saying, hey, you know what? we'll join with you in your vision of this fiction reality here. We're going to jump on top of that. That's not going to work out well. But you see him now. Then he's saying not just that they're doing this coalition of the willing in case there's a peace and they can patrol it. Now he's saying that we need maximum pressure on the Russian side. Now that's worked out so well in the past, hasn't it? Maximum pressure that the United States had done on North Korea, for example, for many, many years, well before Trump came in his first term. That was almost an article of faith, actually all the way back to George Bush when he talked about the axis of evil, which included North Korea. All of that kind of pressure has continued to make North Korea not more supplicant, not more pliable, not wanting peace, but has pushed them, did push them into acquiring nuclear weapons. To this day, they continue to expand their missile capability. They now have an ICBM capacity, so they can strike nearly anywhere in the United States or in Europe or anywhere else they want to, because we keep putting pressure on them. That's somebody who didn't even have nuclear weapons. And of course, the maximum pressure that President Trump started in his first term and that Biden continued on with North Korea, all it did is push them up to the brink. They haven't made that decision to go nuclear yet. I certainly hope they don't. But just using maximum pressure isn't going to get the job done. And that's against a relatively middling power that doesn't have much capacity, as has been graphically shown in the Middle East over the last year and a half or so, with, when all the wars have been going on over there. Iran has been shown to be not that strong, and yet we still want to keep pushing in that direction. Now then, here's Keir Starmer. He wants to say, all right, not just moderate powers like North Korea, not just middling powers like Iran. We want to try it now on a global nuclear superpower. And not just a nuclear superpower, but they have one of the largest land masses, I think the largest land mass of any country on the planet. I think they have like 12 time zones they span. They have natural resources, everything that they would need for their own self inside their country: oil and gas reserves, minerals, food production capacity. I mean, everything that you can imagine. And you want to put maximum pressure on them? You actually use that word now in the fourth year of war, when, according to Joe Biden, when he famously started this whole thing and said, we are going to crush you with economic sanctions like the world has never seen. We're going to just destroy your economy. And how'd that work out? I think it was 2023, or maybe it was last year. I haven't seen the figures. The Russian economy grew by 4.1%. Show me any country, and this is during the war, show me any country in Europe that even came close to that. I don't think there are any. Definitely aren't many. Some of them, I think, like Germany, had either zero or maybe even negative growth. So they're really not falling apart like that. And so you want to put maximum pressure. Now, I actually asked the friend of our show, Ian Puttick, earlier today, what could be behind this? And he actually told me something that was on one of their, where'd it go? I thought I had it up there. I had it right. No, there it is. This is from the Independent in UK. This is dated March 13th. This says Russian economy is on the brink of collapse, and Russia knows it. And I just did a double. I thought that this was from the first war. You remember in the early part of the wars, the UK media especially constantly said how Russia was running out of missiles, they're running out of men, their morale is in the toilet, their economy was on the verge of collapse. This same phrase. And now with a 4.1%, you want to say that? And there was another text here that from somebody. This is just yesterday. Bloomberg reported that Russia has one of the highest. Yeah, that's it right there. Russia has one of the highest foreign exchange reserves in the world. Non-oil and gas revenues surged to record levels in 2023. GDP is up 4.1%. India just signed a 10-year oil supply agreement. The number one exporter of grain, Russia has achieved economic self-sufficiency. And that is the place you want to say is on the brink of collapse? I mean, it would be laughable if it wasn't so self-evidently untrue. And even if you didn't have the actual economic numbers and you just looked at Russia and you looked at, their cities and their style of living, etc., it's self-evident that that's not true. You see, there's no diminution of Russian power on the front lines. They have apparently a couple of groups of 100,000+ troops poised in various places where they could start a new offensive any day now, as soon as the weather gets better. They apparently already have all the reserves. They have the ammunition stockpiles, ammo depots, weapons depots, maintenance depots, everything apparently very well stocked, according to Ukrainian statements, according to Zelensky's statements about 2 or 3 weeks ago. That's where this is coming from, not from me, not from any other source that I can't validate. That's from Zelensky himself. He claimed that. So if that be the case, then again, you keep seeing this foundation is rumbling down here, and it's on faulty footing. Well, it's not, unfortunately, just the European side. There are some American figures that seem to want to pile onto this bad foundation. One of which is one of the most popular people in all of Russia, Victoria Nuland.
Look, it is really very, very important that in this period that Europe not only be able to step up, but step up fast, because as the artillery shells run out, as the air defense interceptors run out, as the ability to produce drones at scale, which have made the difference for Ukraine on the battlefield, gets harder. Europe has the capacity, not only with these proposals, but conceivably collateralizing against frozen assets that they are holding of Putin's, at least for a short time, to do more and to do it fast.
Yeah, I don't need to remind you of how big of a role Victoria Nuland played in the current situation here, going back to 2014, when she and some other Obama administration officials helped lay the groundwork for the overturning of the legally elected government in Ukraine for one that was pliant to the West. So that's where a lot of this started as well. But we've talked about that in other shows. But the bottom line is she keeps coming back. Even after she basically got fired in the Biden administration before they left office, people still keep putting a mic in her face, and she loves to talk. And so people keep listening to her. And of course, that she's given a message that many in Europe love. And so they'll continue to listen to her, and they'll say, yeah, see, even these American intellectuals keep going down this path. It's odd, though, that even in her telling there, she's talking about all these different categories of things that are on the lower side for the Ukraine. So she has apparently this, I keep hesitating using the same word over, but fiction, Hollywood script style vision that if the West, and that's going to now mean just Europe, if they can provide them with enough stuff, they can still get it done here. They can still change this way, oblivious to the fact that when Russia was on its back foot in 2023 and Ukraine was given virtually every category of everything you can imagine. Listen, the United States alone provided over 10, this is a number on the Pentagon website, 10,000 military vehicles of various types, support trucks, ammunition trucks, Humvees, MRAPs, Stryker vehicles, Bradley fighting vehicles, M113 armored vehicles, Abrams tanks, all that together, 10,000 by the United States alone. And of course, Europe has probably come close to that themselves with all different versions of the same categories and artillery pieces and millions of artillery rounds, 500 million bullets of various calibers, etc. Just everything you can imagine. And it failed. It failed utterly, broke its teeth on just the first line of 5 Russian defensive lines, didn't even penetrate that all the way. Then, of course, in the entire year that followed, Russia has been on a slow and methodical grind of the Ukrainian armed forces. Even though all this stuff came, even though the U.S. gave them this $61 billion package that so many of its advocates claimed would change the nature of the war and turn things around, it didn't. And yet, with all of that physical, graphic, quantifiable failures, you still have these people thinking and claiming, as she just did, that it's going to work now. That if we just come up with enough stuff, that somehow magically, because we're writing this Hollywood script, magically it's going to happen on the ground. Even though that script didn't get followed by reality at any point in the past. And well, there's one more I don't really hesitate to show. It's important to know the truth. There's a former U.S. 4-star general, General Wesley Clark, who was a former NATO commander. So he was the former Supreme Allied Commander for NATO, someone of that caliber. Now, you've been hearing this, and I've talked about it several times, especially in recent weeks, because the phrase keeps getting used by the likes of Mark Rutte or Keir Starmer and other Manuel Macron. They keep saying a just and lasting peace. That's what they want. Now, remember, prior to 7-8 months ago, they were always talking about winning. They were talking about reestablishing the 1991 borders or maybe the 2022 borders, et cetera. But then they changed. They said, all right, well, okay, a negotiated settlement from a position of strength with leading to a just and lasting peace. But no one ever defined it. Well, recently, General Wes Clark was asked that very question, and he did define it.
To you, General, what is a just end of the war in Ukraine? What is a just and long-lasting peace? Everyone says that, like from every corner I hear that. But to you, sir, what will it be like?
It would be the withdrawal of Russian forces from Donbass and Crimea. You'll give them a naval base at Sevastopol. They'll return all the children who've been abducted, account for all the people that have been injured or missing. They'll pay reparations, and they'll also turn over to the International Criminal Court those people who have been charged with international war crimes.
Which is unlikely to happen, isn't it?
It's not likely to happen, and it's a very sad thing because for 80 years we've tried to build an international environment in which the rule of law, territorial integrity, human rights are respected.
I added that last part. I thought about cutting that clip off after he ended his comment, but then the interviewer there, who, by the way, elsewhere in that interview, he's in Kiev. He's unequivocally pro-Ukraine. He actually said, yeah, if we get all the stuff we ask, we will 100% drive all the Russians out. He still believes that. Okay, someone in Ukraine, I mean, I can understand the incentive and the desire, even though you can see it's not going to happen. But for Wes Clark, at least the guy had the honesty to say, yeah, that's probably not likely to happen. And then I added that last part of the clip so you could see the mentality of further mentality of General Clark. And he represents a whole slew of people in the West who believe those kinds of things. That, yes, a just and lasting peace that we keep talking about means, for reasons never explained why they would do it, that Russia will just withdraw from all of the territory that it has seized, that it will forget about all of its war aims, that it will just forget about all the Russian people that they have been fighting to protect for all these years, and that they'll submit themselves to war crimes tribunals, none of which on the Ukraine side, of course, because they're the good guys, so they haven't done anything wrong. And then that they'll just say, I'll pay reparations. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and pay for everything that had happened here. I mean, even in a Harry Potter type world, even in a Hollywood script, no one's going to write something like that because that is so stupid and so far detached from reality that even a Hollywood script would say no one would come see that movie because it is way beyond even the theoretical movie script kind of a deal. That'll never happen. So that movie wouldn't make money because no one would come see it. And yet you see that he has it. And then he adds on at the end that we've been trying for 80 years to build this rules-based order. Well, let's make sure that everyone is clear on what he's talking about. What he says is that we like the way the world was in 1991, 1992, when the Soviet Union disintegrated, when the Warsaw Pact disintegrated, and we won the Cold War. And so at that moment, Russia was a shambles and would be until like the mid-2000s, really. So for about a decade and a half, Russia was absolutely decrepit. Militarily, they were a shell of the old former Soviet Union, and literally they had rusting tanks. They couldn't even get them out of the warehouses to do field exercises. Their ships were literally rotting in their bays. They weren't a threat to anyone other than their nuclear weapons, which obviously are always on the ready. But conventionally, they were nothing. Their troops themselves were awful. And demoralized, et cetera. They had no leadership, anything, all this kind of stuff. That's the world that he wants to still exist. So he wants it to where the West, who was unequivocally at a position of dominant power, would just tell everybody, all right, here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do, China. Here's what you're going to do, Russia. Here's what you're going to do, Middle East. And anyone who stands in our way, we'll just put them under our thumb. We'll squeeze it, and maybe fire a few missiles here and there, threaten them, talk mean, and then they'll do what we want. And that's how it was for a long time. That's why these first number of rounds of NATO expansion moving to the east, Russia was complaining about it, but they had no power to do anything else. That's what Wes Clark means when he says we've been trying for this rules-based order. Notice he didn't say legal, law-based order. He said rules-based order. That's a distinction is important because they write the rules, not laws, but rules. We want a rules-based order where we get to set the rules and everyone else has to simply comply. And he doesn't like it to when reality goes in to where now China is definitely no longer a vassal state and a weak power, economically or otherwise. Russia is definitely not. We have made them stronger than they were before. So whereas it was the power dynamic was definitely in the US/European side, now that's not the case. Now we have made it so and given them incentive to build up this force because we keep helping the Ukraine side kill Russians every day. And this war continues on because without it, the war would have ended years ago. So now Russia is in a point to where they're going to say, okay, new rules now. Now then we're going to be talking about some of this stuff. We're going to be the ones that are going to be setting the stage here. Now, all these European people I've told you seem to be devoid of any kind of ability or willingness to see reality. But President Trump, on the other hand, does. Now, you just saw Zelensky say that Putin's lying about the Kursk. The situation is stable there. But funny because President Trump doesn't seem to believe that. As a matter of fact, he published this on Truth Social where he said, we've had very good and productive discussions with Vladimir Putin of Russia yesterday, and there is a very good chance that this horrible, bloody war can finally come to an end. Trump is the only one who is saying that he wants the war to come to an end. He's not talking about continuing it on. He wants it to come to an end. But at this very moment, thousands of Ukraine troops are completely surrounded by the Russian military and in a very bad and vulnerable position. I have strongly requested to President Putin that their lives be spared. President Trump also is aware of the cost to the Ukraine side. He is paying attention to that. And many clips we've shown you where he repeatedly talks about the pictures he sees and the reports that he's shown about all these people dying on both sides, or these beautiful young people, as he keeps referring to them. But he said he asked that they would be spared, that this horrible massacre, one of the worst since World War II, doesn't happen. God bless them all. Now, overnight, Vladimir Putin responded to that.
But before we begin, I would like to say that we have familiarized ourselves with today's appeal by the President of the United States, Mr. Trump, to spare the lives of Ukrainian army servicemen, some of whom are blocked by Russian troops in the invasion zone of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Kursk region. In this regard, we draw attention to the fact that Ukrainian militants have committed numerous crimes against civilians in the invasion zone. These acts, as I have already stated, are classified by the General Prosecutor's Office of the Russian Federation as terrorism. At the same time, we understand President Trump's appeal to approach these servicemen with humanitarian considerations. In this regard, I emphasize that in the event of laying down their arms and surrendering, their lives and decent treatment will be guaranteed in accordance with international law and the laws of the Russian Federation.
So President Trump asked for something, and President Putin says, we'll give them a chance. He didn't just say we'll spare them, but he said we won't just go and kill them, because there are those in Russia, believe me, there is a strong movement in Russia of people who do want them to go and kill them all. Because in the views of Russia, and this doesn't get any coverage in the West, there have been numerous reports, videos, interviews, etc., that says that the Ukrainian service members, while they have been occupying the Russian territory, tortured and murdered many civilian people. Old people, women, children, kids, everybody. They have allegedly, there are large numbers of people, and it's all over the Russian news. Just like the Bucha situation animated the Ukraine side in the first few months of the war and is always cited as Russian war crimes. On the Russian side, they say they have uncovered all of these Ukrainian war crimes on their territory. they're not in a very forgiving mood. They don't want to let these guys go. They're still on Russian territory, surrounded. Many in Russia want to kill them. President Trump has said, I'm asking you not to do that. He didn't demand it. He asked for it. Putin, I think, recognized it and says, okay, Putin is still willing to negotiate. He has not got to the point yet to where he says, all right, forget it. Everything's off the table. We're not going to talk about anything. We'll see you on the battlefield. He hadn't said that yet. And Trump is the only one standing in his way of doing that, because all of these other 37 members of this alleged coalition of the willing, all they want to talk about is being a bold, muscular military force arrayed against Russia. Not even talking about ending the war, except on these hypothetical, hyper Hollywood type conditions that Wes Clark talked about there. Trump is saying we need to get this war to an end. And so here's a confidence building measure. If Trump asks for their lives to be spared, Russia is going to give them the chance. If the Ukrainians actually comply, lay down their arms, then they'll be spared. They'll go into POW camps and whatever, although the Russians said that they will be tried according to Russian Federation, so they're not completely off the hook yet. So let's don't be fooled on that issue. Let's don't be confused on that. But the point being that Trump is trying to end the war, definitely has that as objective, and he's almost standing against this whole onslaught from the Europeans who want to push for more war. And, I'm going to show you a couple of more scenes here of what Zelensky, because he's going to continue to foist this and just poke the Russians in the chest a little bit more. But I'm going to need some help from the bullpen here. So I'm going to have to bring Gary in, because this is just, man, this one's killing me, man. I mean, I think you can see that. But, Gary, first of all, help me out here, man. What is going on in Europe?
It's funny, Danny, as you were speaking, presenting it, and, wondering, how much delusion can there be in any one place? And we've got these leaders all over Europe that are under this delusion. Danny, you've heard the term manifesting. Have you ever heard that before?
I have not.
Manifesting is something that I don't even know what to call it. It's a movement. It's almost like a religious belief, although they don't call it a religion. But it's basically, you want to manifest something. You want to bring it about. You want to bring it into your life. It's the idea that through the power of belief, you can effectively think a goal into becoming reality. Now, I know, that's like, what are you talking about? Well, there's so many people. You go onto TikTok and you put manifesting in, you'll see all these, I guess I'll call them manifesting gurus, who will tell you and explain to you how important it is to manifest if you really want to change something about your life. And it could be really anything, a job or romance or, you name it. You can manifest this power. You have it. It is within you to bring it about. So you speak it basically into existence. You can manifest. We will manifest together. I think
they used to have a thing. You may be familiar with this one too. They used to have a thing in some of the Christian, U.S. Christian thought or whatever. This name it and claim it mentality. That if you just pray for something,
it's the
name
same
it,
thing.
then you're going to get it.
Right. They did it with the Bible and Jesus. And now forget Jesus and the Bible. We don't need him to manifest something. We'll bring it in ourselves because we have that power within us.
Yeah, it never works out that way, but I don't know. I guess because it's so alluring to believe it, because you want it to be true, that you can go down. I guess it's one thing if it's a businessman, but holy cow, when you're talking about heads of state and you could potentially be bringing us closer to war, that's a pretty dangerous way to think.
Man, I'd say so. My goodness, it's I think it also ties in, Danny. We've spoken about this before. The egos that are involved, the sheer desire to want the best for everybody here, and this is what's best for everybody. And they think that can overplay the realities that you so presented.
But then we have, and I'm going to go back to him again here. Because Zelensky's going to paint a picture here, continuing on in that same conference that Starmer was speaking at, that really this is just Putin's trying to avoid ending the war. Check this out.
Yeah, he says talks are not enough.
The truth is, Putin has already dragged out the war for nearly a week after the talks in Jeddah in Saudi, and he will keep dragging it out. This is Russia's war, more than 3 years of full-scale fighting and destruction. To stop this, Active pressure is needed, not just talks, pressure on Russia. Strong measures are needed to take even the first steps toward ending the war.
Come on, Gary, help me out
Danny,
here.
when you
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, when you go to the meeting, make sure your gun is on your hip. Don't walk into this meeting without the gun on your hip, because that's where it's really going to end up going. We can just have all this talk if you want, but it's the guns that we're relying upon in the end.
And when he says there, we need to bring pressure on Russia. Like, wow, I hadn't thought of that. That's something we haven't tried. Let's do that. Come on, man. How can he make a statement like that when that's all we've done from the beginning of this? What do you think he has in mind there?
Oh, well, following in Starmer's footsteps. Listen, you don't think that's music to his ears? To hear what Starmer's going, oh my gosh, he must be, jumping out of the seat, even though he's sitting down, to hear what Starmer's saying and hear the others and the money that rolled in. Starmer said, we didn't have it, we didn't play it today, but Starmer said he couldn't believe the unbelievable amount of money that's rolled in to then support this new coalition. Yeah, he said it was unbelievable how much money has rolled in to make this coalition a reality.
Well, I mean, it goes back to that picture you show all the time from December 23, I think, of Zelensky standing there with all the really happy arms makers because they love that. That's the one.
His most important meeting.
And it continues to be that way. And I'm sure that those smiles are even bigger today because none of those folks care a whit about all of the men that die on the front line, whether Russian or Ukraine. It's inconsequential as long as that cash keeps flowing. That seems to be what motivates Starmer, I guess.
Oh, Danny, the money there. Who could resist? Who could resist the billions and billions? And that's what's going
apparently on. President Trump can. So at least there's one person that can do it. But man, these guys don't seem to care, which is frightening. But let me ask you one other question. So you had that headline up there a second ago from the UK media to where that Russia's on the verge of collapse. I mean, they're not on the verge of collapse. So is there ever a point? I keep saying, what is the point? But now maybe the better question is there ever going to be a point to where all of the fiction finally just collapses and the British people realize that they've been lied to?
Oh, Dan, I don't have the answer to that. My goodness. Yeah. When is that going to happen? They're riding this train as far as there's track, and there's still a little bit of track. They can squeeze it out. They got this new trounce of money that just rolled in, that they were even astonished that it came in as quickly as it did, and as monumental as it was. They were struck by it. So it's wow, what a great start to this new coalition. My goodness, already we've got some momentum here. So there's no reason to stop it now. Well, this train rolls on.
One of the other things that puzzles me so much in that. And you see that look, Trump is screaming every time the cameras are rolling. We're ending this. We're not going to just keep going on. And I'm aggressively sending people to Moscow, a meeting in the Middle East, wherever we got to do to bring the war to an end. And yet you see these people and this coalition of the willing, they keep talking not just about patrolling some mythical ceasefire, but that they want to have peace enforcers, and somehow they think that that's going to happen. Now, one of the key parts of that, which Zelensky also mentioned here, is something that is categorically rejected by Trump. Let's see if you can pick it out of this clip.
We need to keep working on the contingents that will form the foundation of Europe's future armed forces. Peace will be more reliable with the European contingents on the ground and the American side as a backstop. There must be clear commitments on how this will function.
What stood out to you?
Oh, just the fact that he's to me he's just turning the tables. This is so clever of him to try and say what we really need to do is be the aggressor, in the sense our aggression will be the generator of peace.
Yeah. And then the one thing he adds is American backstop. He says, all this coalition of the willing stuff and an American backstop. We have shown, I think a week or so ago, where even Starmer and after Zelensky left with his tail between his legs after the humiliation in the White House on that Friday, that famous debacle, you see that he's now still saying, we need a backstop. Starmer has said, we can't do this without the backstop, the American. Trump has said, there's not going to be a backstop. We're not going to provide any kind of military force to patrol anything. We want the war to come to an end. And yet, here they are still ignoring everything Trump has said. I'm sure that this has been communicated by Mike Waltz, by Steve Witkoff, Trump himself behind the scenes. We're not going to backstop.
Danny,
So why do they keep saying it?
Yeah. Well, Danny, listen, you just saw a beautiful demonstration of manifesting, Danny. He talks as if it's going to happen. He talks as if it's already happened. It's really already happened, but we're going to see it appear very, very soon. So they keep proclaiming it over and over religiously, many of them proclaiming this. So pretty soon we're just waiting for it to rise to the surface. It'll be there. We're just waiting.
Yeah, you'll be waiting a while. As a matter of fact, okay, so now then let's touch on the ceasefire issue, since that's been mentioned several times here, and that's a precursor to what could come as a negotiated settlement. At least that's what the U.S. and the Ukraine side has said they wanted. That's why Ukraine agreed to a 30-day ceasefire if Russia would agree to it. But the Ukraine side, Zelensky specifically, has been kind of miffed that Putin doesn't just automatically say, okay, cool, whatever y'all said is fine. He actually put some conditions on it. Here's how he put that.
For many years, Putin has been lying to the world, claiming that he did not provoke or prolong this war. But now, with a ceasefire situation, everything is very clear. Whoever imposes unnecessary conditions that complicate and delay everything. That is the true cause of the war.
Oh, Danny, you gotta love the psychology, right? Let me represent to you really what's going on. I know what you've seen, I know what you've experienced, but here is reality. There we go. The Zelensky actor came out. There's his Shakespearean presentation of the Ukraine-Russian war.
What is that? Shakespeare meets manifest or something? Is that kind of what we're seeing there?
Yeah, there we go. We can marry those, right? We can do that.
Yeah, that's just golly. If we were just talking about, if this was like, you know what? If this was a Netflix series, I mean, we could just laugh at it and say, "Oh, that's so dumb. That would never happen anyway." But golly, what? That's so dumb. But it's not a Netflix series, at least not yet. I'm sure it'll probably end up being that way. But
no, and Danny, you so, I know, and you so perfectly couched everything as to what this all is leading up to and what it all means, and for this to play out the way it is playing out is it's horrific. It's horrific.
So in these last few minutes, Gary, I mean, let's talk a second about the other half of this equation, which none of these people ever want to talk about here. What motivation would Russia and Putin specifically ever have to take Zelensky's version of reality and say, sure, America and Ukraine agreed to a 30-day ceasefire, so you should just take what we said and do it? Because that seems to be his implication.
Yeah, Danny, I've not as much as you have, but I've been watching Putin here more than I ever have in my life. Really, I guess he's been. There's been reason to watch him before, but even now, over these last few years, and I am taken by the amount of measure that he has, his demeanor. It's amazing to me that he hasn't been fed up, and he's had so many opportunities. You laid out the different times over the course of these last 3 years where there was opportunity to end this, and there were very real possibilities, and Zelensky has shunned it. Zelensky and everyone else that was backing him have shunned those opportunities. So the fact that Putin hasn't just thrown up his arms and say, really, you want it, you got it.
And you get the feeling that's not far away, because I mean, you and I have been talking sometimes even off camera that there's a lot of chatter, not so much in the background anymore, in the Russian side, actually out in the open. There was, as a matter of fact, there was an article in the Washington Post, I think just yesterday, to where they said Putin's got a lot of threats, not threats, but pushback coming from the hard right inside Russia, that they don't want him to do any peace deal. They just want to continue to go on. You know what? I think you had that. We had a full screen of that yesterday. You still have that handy by any chance? And if you
And
don't,
tell me more. Something from the Washington Post?
yeah, it's from the Washington Post. Let me see if I can pull up that headline here so I can see what I actually sent. Oops, wrong one.
I'm looking too.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm on the right screen here. I'll pull it up. I'll read you the headline. It was, if peace comes, Putin could face the ire of his most hardline backers. And if you can pull that up, that'd be great. But in the meantime, I'll just read off what it said. Military bloggers and influential nationalists are calling this again, Washington Post, calling the proposed ceasefire an attempt to steal victory from Russia. Pro-Kremlin political analyst Sergei Markov wrote on Wednesday, "What is our specific Russian joy here?" asked nationalist writer Zakhar Prilepin on Telegram. After the widespread Russian delight over the month's Oval Office confrontation between Zelensky and President Trump, what matters, he continued, is how combat ready the armed forces of Ukraine are and how Russian Orthodox Church fares in Ukraine, and whose soldiers are walking around in Kiev, Odessa, Kharkov, Kramatorsk, and Kherson, which, according to our constitution, are all part of Russia. That's what the Russian side is saying. And they're saying, look, we don't want this to come to a peaceful end if it means that we don't get the war aims that we have. And to a lot of them, especially Odessa and Kharkiv, in Kherson City, they consider all those Russian cities, and they don't want anything that's going to stop short of that. And apparently many in the military and even some generals are really of that mindset. So the question is going to be, how much longer can Putin hold off those sides? Because we saw what happened in, I guess it was 23 with Prigozhin, who was the first really pressing about, he got mad at Putin for not pushing hard enough. And one wonders, now he ended up mysteriously getting killed. So that's a pretty chilling message. But it seems these people are getting more and more bold. How do you see that playing out?
I don't know, but I'm not surprised. Maybe that's even one of the reasons, if you remember this week, how Putin showed up at Kursk in military gear.
Yeah.
It was quite, it was striking. Everybody commented on that. Whoa, what's going on here? He really means business. Yeah, the ceasefire. Yeah, I'll do ceasefire with the gun on my hip. I'll do ceasefire. You can understand what the tension that you just described is there. Again, he's so measured. It's not like he doesn't realize that, and he's weighing it as we go along here. I thought it was also interesting, Dana, the way you pointed out how quickly, really, Putin responded to Trump's request regarding the Kursk region that where the men are surrounded, the Ukrainian soldiers are surrounded. I thought what a great sign that was. I mean, and it's funny. The Europeans don't see the hopefulness in that they see. Do you see the dynamic that's going on? Do you see what's the web that's being weaved here? But no, they don't. They won't even recognize that. It was like, it kind of reminds me of what happened when Trump addressed Congress a couple of weeks ago. He couldn't have done anything right. You could bring cancer survivors on. You could bring spouses and children of people that have been murdered, and none of the Democrats could possibly recognize and at least applaud for these people who have had tragedy in their lives, and we're here to honor them. No matter what Trump did, it's not good. And the same thing with Putin. Even when Putin shows reasonableness, doesn't matter. As you said, Putin evil, Russia evil, period.
Now, we're a little over time here, but I do want to at least get your thoughts on one more thing here. And that is, how do you see the growing challenges and dynamics between Trump and Europe? Because we seem to be pursuing different outcomes here. And at some point, it may come to a head. How do you see that playing out?
It's he's what do you call it when you reserve yourself? He's holding himself back. Trump, I think, in the very beginning, after the rumble in the White House with Zelensky, he was quick to say, "Listen, man, you want to go your own way, go your own way, but you're doing it without me, and I'm not following you on this." And he hasn't said anything quite that acerbic since that time. With all the not the rumblings, with all of the with what the coalition is trying to accomplish here. He's actually been tolerant. I'm surprised he hasn't outright spoken out against it at all. He had them in the White House, right? Macron came, Starmer came, right? Very cordial with both those guys. And he let them say what they wanted to say, and was, showed a beautiful example of tolerance. So I'm waiting for him to say, you know, will you guys knock it off? I'm trying to get something done over here. Do
Yeah.
you see what's going on? Will you shut the hell up, please, so I can accomplish this piece? Waiting
Yeah, I
for him
think
to
if,
say
if
that.
push comes to shove, Trump, I don't think Trump is all about. It has shown really, I think, as you said, great restraint in dealing with
Yeah.
the Western Europeans so far. But if they start to become a genuine impediment to him accomplishing what he wants to, yeah, I think he's going to cut bait.
Cut bait, bring down the hammer, in the blink of an eye, he'll bring the hammer down.
Well, we'll certainly be watching that as it goes along there. But appreciate you coming to the pulpit, man, because I was dying out here with all this insanity today. At least, you know, I got somebody in the ring with me, so that was cool. So I appreciate that.
You know, you're never alone. Listen, and that's what we love about everybody that's been so just so loyal watching the show. We're so grateful to you guys. We love that you're there. We see, you know, we read all your comments, and we're so appreciative, and we don't take it lightly.
And by the way, on that note, we said the other day that I was going to address some things that have been happening in the news related to my name. I put out a tweet yesterday to where I'm referring back to something that Jesus said when he was being accused of all kinds of stuff, and it says in the scripture in Matthew that he uttered not a word in his defense. And after a lot of soul searching, I believe that's the right thing to do in this case. I feel not only do I not need to, but that it wouldn't even be necessary for me to defend myself against what it's being accused of me and all kinds of things. You can Google it. Believe me, it's all over the place there. But we're just going to continue going on with Daniel Davis Deep Dive because we are unintimidated and uncompromising. We're going to continue to bring you the truth. I know that might not be satisfying to everybody, but for the time being, I think that's the right course of action to take. And I hope that you'll at least accept that for now, and we'll see if anything changes in the future. But you can continue to count on us bringing you the truth and what's going on so you can make sense of your world. Thank you very much. We'll see
Danny,
you on the next episode.
Yeah, Danny, you've been so clear and so unequivocal about your stances on everything. I think that's one of the things that people, our viewers, have so appreciated and know that they're not getting that other places, and that's the reason why they come here. So your words that you're not backing down from are all out there for all to see, and anybody that watches this show on any regular basis, they know what you've been saying because you say it repeatedly and clearly. So yeah, there's nothing to apologize for. It's there, and we stand on that. And we're going forward with it,
We are.
like what the show's all about: being unintimidated and uncompromised.
Perfect. Good way to get capper, Gary. Thanks. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Daniel Davis Deep Dive.